Hello everyone. Going to do some more work on my first gen Dodge Cummins today. It has a very poor condition steering shaft in it. So I'm going to replace it with this Borgeson shaft. See, I have all the stuff here. There's the steering shaft itself. It came in this nice anti-rust paper. I also got a new, a rag joint. Made in USA. And it also comes with some installation instructions. So let's get started and hack off that old shaft. This is the first thing you should do before you remove your old steering shaft. I just wrapped a ratchet strap from the seat up to the steering wheel and back down to the seat, and cinched it down a little bit so I can't turn the steering wheel, so I can't lose its position. Alright, we're getting ready to put the steering shaft onto the truck, and you see I decided to paint it because it's just bare metal and I didn't want it rusting, especially after spending $200 on it, so gave it a coat of Rust-Oleum. Nothing special there. And I'm going to do one more thing that isn't suggested or recommended or instructed by the instructions. But on my previous steering shaft, these two pieces which are supposed to slide, they were seized and frozen into one piece. And I also think the boot was gone, I can't remember. But anyway, I got this syringe, I filled it up with grease. And I'm going to put it in there and I'm going to inject some grease into the boot there, and my idea is that that'll hold some grease and it'll both be a water barrier and also a lubricator. So I mean, this really isn't meant to cycle in and out very much, pretty much only if the cab flexes a lot in relation to the frame, but it's just something that bothers me. It's probably totally useless what I'm doing, but that's what I'm going to do. And also, this is a tube, it's not solid. See, there's the hole. And I'm going to put a couple shots of grease down there in the bottom. So if any water, because this shaft is going to be angled upwards like that in the truck, so if any water goes down in there, hopefully the grease will help out there as well. Alright, now I'm going to attach the steering shaft onto the rag joint. There's the rag joint right there. Oops. That's a new rag joint. I would suggest putting a new one on there because it was only $15, $18, something like that, and you're probably going to wreck the old one getting the old steering shaft off. At least I had to. And also, unrelated, but sort of, that hose you see right there rubbing up against the steering shaft, that's the clutch hose going from the master to the slave cylinder, and it seems like the only way for it to go was right by the steering shaft, and it was rubbing. I didn't want it to rub through and eventually I would lose my clutch, so I put a piece of hose on there and secured it with a hose clamp, so that's safe now. I tried putting on either side of the steering shaft and it was still interfering, so just something of note if you have a standard transmission. Okay, so I got the shaft on the rag joint. I only loosely tightened the bolts because having this dangling was kind of difficult to tighten them up. So I'm going to fit this on the splines like that, and I need two hands to extend this out because it's the tight fit between those two pieces. I'll just fit it on the spline like that, and I'll push this yoke of the U-joint all the way down, just like it shows in the instructions that are supplied, which is until you push it down until the end of the spline shaft is even with the hole that the spline shaft goes through on this side of the yoke. Alright, and then once you get the U-joint slid onto the spline shaft there, loosen the lock nut, and then get an Allen wrench on there and tighten it down pretty good. You know, maybe loosen it and tighten it again. And your goal is to crunch the splines a little bit and make a mark, so that when you take this off again, you'll see where the set screw is sitting, and you can file or grind a little flat for this set screw to sit on, because this screw will not sit on the factory flat. It'll be somewhere else. You have to make your own flat. Alright, two things about this rag joint. Firstly, I'm not entirely sure how this was supposed to go together, because no instructions came with it. But you see that on that bolt there, there's the bolt, the washer, and then lock washer and the nut. At least that's how it was supposed to be given, the number of washers you were given. You had 4 washers and 4 lock washers. But when I was tightening that nut down just with the lock washer, I realized, wait a minute, I'm just going to send that nut and washer right through this rubber rag joint. So I went and found a nice wide fender washer, put that on there, and then the lock washer and then the nut, and that was fine. So that worked. I easily could have just flipped this around and used this washer to distribute the force on this rubber rag joint. Either way, just something to keep in mind when you're tightening your new rag joint down, if you choose to buy one. And the other thing is that when you're pulling this U-joint down onto the steering box and you're sliding this coupling out, it's a pretty stiff fit, or at least mine is. So you want to make sure that when you're pulling this out, you're not pulling this rag joint down. You'll see that the rubber will bend down and bend back up. And that was the case with me, and I was looking at it, I thought, man, that rag joint's really bent. But I just took some big pliers and squeezed it right there and brought everything back up, so the rag joint looks pretty flat now. So that's the other thing to keep in mind when you're installing this steering shaft. Okay, so I made a test run of this of the alignment of the steering shaft to the steering box real quick before I ground the flat, and as it turned out, it was a little bit off, and I reset it. It was a little bit off again. Let's see if you can see those 2 circles on the there we go, on the spline shaft there. That's from the set screw right there. Those are my 2 attempts at getting it straight, and one of the marks was just a little bit too much one way, and the other mark was just a little bit too much the other way, and they were off by the same amount. So I figured, well, I'll put the flat right in the middle of those 2. So I'm going to get my Dremel. I'm not going to use my angle grinder. It'll remove material much faster, but I think it's too big of a tool, and it might remove material a little bit too fast. So I'm going to take it slow with the Dremel grinder and grind myself a nice little flat. Alright, I used this wheel on the Dremel. It worked pretty well. It's sort of a cutoff wheel, but it's a little thicker, as you can see. It worked really well. Here's the flat. See, I machined it, or rather ground it pretty deep, but not as deep as that stock one there, but I think that should be fine. And so now all I gotta do is slide this shaft on there. Alright, well, I slid it on as straight as I could, and tightened down the set screw, then I tightened down the lock nut. I did use a little drop of blue Loctite, Just it made me feel a little better about it. Then tighten down this shaft collar with that set screw right there. You're supposed to tighten it down right at the end of this bellows coupling. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what that shaft collar is for, but that's where you're supposed to tighten it. And the last thing, just to check, since you've been sliding that this piece in and out, make sure your rag joint isn't stretched out too much or jammed back up too much, and you see that's more or less even. So the last thing to do is to fire it up and take it for a test drive to make sure everything's all right. Well, took it for a test run. It was still a little bit off, so I shouldn't have Loctited it like I did, but the Loctite hadn't set, so I just loosened it, and it was probably one spline off, so I readjusted it, took it for another test drive. It was just right, so I backed the screw out, the set screw, dribbled some more Loctite on there, tightened it down real good. Now I'm not going to mess with it. It's just right. Of course, there's a little bit of play in the steering, like always. So keep in mind, if you're on a crowned road, your steering wheel might be a little off one way or the other due to the crown. But if you can find a flat, straight road, that's the best place to test it. So anyway, that's about it as far as putting in a new Borgeson steering shaft. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope it helps out some of you guys out there. And be sure to hit the subscribe button and like button if you haven't already. Leave a comment, leave a suggestion. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out my other first-gen Dodge Cummins videos. I've got plenty of them, and if you're working on your old truck, my videos are the videos to see. So, once again, thanks for watching. As always, come back for more.